I can't pay my rent with learning, right? That's not.
Yeah, you just go to your landlord and be like, but I learned this new Python package. And they'll be like, what are you talking about? I think it's also kind of funny that there's such a low threshold for what companies owe interviewees, I guess we could call them, where you don't even get feedback. You can spend 10 hours on a project, you don't even get like 2 words about it.
Hey everyone, Future Sam here. You're about to watch part one of our two-part series on interviewing techniques. This first part is titled From Ghosting to Guidance. It's mostly meant to cover just the general frustrating world of applications, take-home projects, getting ghosted after an interview, and navigating all of that chaos. So in this segment, we'll talk about some of the hard parts of interviewing and then lead into how mentorship can help not only with the interviews, but also for your journey after you get the job and where you go from there. Hope you enjoy it. It was a fun one for us to talk about, as you'll see. Welcome to Saturdata, your favorite weekend data show where we teach as much as we learn. Chef, how you doing?
I'm good, Sam. How are you doing? Happy to be
I
here.
I am happy to be here as well. I'm excited for the topic we have today.
Totally. And what is our topic today, Sam?
Interviews, everyone's favorite thing.
We all look forward to them. It sucks to even have a job because then you can't interview as much anymore.
I live to interview.
Yes, I live to interview, live for meetings. They can be fun. And I think my most recent interview cycle, I did have a behavioral round that really felt like 5 minutes because I was having such a nice time. And I was just kind of like, this is how they should be, you know?
I like when interviews feel short.
Yes.
You're vibing with whoever the recruiter is or the
Hmm.
interviewer, or right, you're just interested, or you think the questions they're asking are interesting, which is always fun.
Yeah, totally. When the conversation kind of flows naturally. And something that's actually helped me, because I'm a pretty nervous, anxious person sometimes, something that's helped me with interview nerves and interview jitters is just thinking of the person on the other end as someone that I find interesting, as someone who I want to talk to and learn more about. Because if you think of it as a coffee chat, I think, will perform your best because you're not putting as much pressure on yourself to like be perfect or be the perfect candidate. It's like, oh, let me ask this question to you and let me show you that I'm interested and I want to have a good conversation.
Right, or like treating it even as a peer coding session.
Yeah, that's cool. I think for technical people, that's a really cool way of putting it of like, okay, we're pair programming and I don't know what the problem is yet or whatever. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like when they give you a, because this will happen in technical interviews, right? Where they give you a scenario, they ask you to code out, right, the answer, and you treat it, instead of you treating it as I'm getting judged on my abilities, right? You go through, you think out loud, you talk out. This is what I do in peer programming, like our pair programming, right? I'll talk out loud while I'm coding, so the other person can kind of see where I'm going and they can let me know if I'm on the right track or not. Like just like in an interview, this is how I pair program too, because I think then it makes sure you're both on the right page, and I think that's what interviews are all about. Right? We want to understand your ability to think through a problem, even if you don't necessarily know the answer. You can start knocking out steps to get to the answer.
Totally. And I think it also speaks to the fact that you've spent a lot more time than I have on the other side of the table as the interviewer. And as a technical interviewer, you really are looking for pair programming. You're really looking for someone who explains what they're doing, is like architecting and designing while they're coding, and is actually collaborating with you on solving the problem. So I think like that perspective probably comes a lot from you being on the other side of the table.
You're probably not going to know the answer ever at work, right? Like that's why we have to do the work to find the answer. So in the interview, we're not going to give you an answer, and as an interviewee, I don't expect to be given a question that I just know the answer to and I can code right off the top of my head. Probably not.
Yeah, that's another good perspective because what you're kind of doing is setting yourself up so that you're not just leak code memorizing stuff. It's like, oh, I know how to do these 3 types of dynamic programming problems. Like you're expecting to not necessarily know all the steps involved in that right away.
I'm also not a software engineer, so I don't get standard questions like, can you reverse a linked list or can you center a div, right? Like I don't, these kinds of questions that are solved a long time ago are usually the data questions we get in a technical interview or give are are unique in a way.
Totally. And it does kind of push past the BS of the data structures a little bit, where like I had a conversation at work with some people in a big team building week for me. And we were talking about how we think and how we visualize. And actually, my head of engineering and I kind of think of things the same way. Like we visualize everything in like nodes and like moving in a certain direction and stuff. And we were talking about how some people think like that, and another one of our engineers thinks in lists. And I was like, yeah, and there's not a single person who thinks in linked lists. No one, nobody is using this unless they absolutely have to. It's kind of a funny discussion.
Just because in most, well, no, I'm not going to say in most, I'm going to say specifically in Python, which most people are using now, the concept of like there's just no concept of linked list. Like we don't have to work with linked list in Python.
Right. You have to go out of your way to create a node class and create a linked list class that inherits from that. It's not like a built-in thing that you would naturally use. That's a good point. And I think that's the only context where I've done it. Like I haven't actually used a language that needs them or uses them
Right.
quite a lot. So I don't even know what that looks like.
Well, before we get too off track, as we like to do, we'll jump
Totally.
into interviews a little bit deeper. And I
Yeah.
think one of the first questions we want to address here is the different types of interviews that you run into in the interviewing cycle in the data space, right? That's kind of an umbrella, but what's contained within this. And for me, right, I'll just say behavioral interviews, technical interviews, which also
Hmm.
technical interviews look very different, right? There's a lot of different kinds of technical interviews. Consultative interviews, I've had before, like strategy consultative interviews, just to see how you handle situations and scenarios. And that one we mentioned earlier, which are those are like what would you call these? Interview techniques or types of interviews versus modalities of interviews. So modalities of interviews being the live interviews, which I wouldn't expect anything else. But as we mentioned earlier, sometimes we have a monologue type interview where we get recorded answering questions.
Yeah, objectively the worst type of interview, by the way, the monologue interview. And I can talk a little bit more about the specifics, but when I was in university, I had a lot of these for internships because I think people really don't want to invest in internships, which like rightly so, they don't return a lot for companies, so fair enough. But you just kind of feel dehumanized at that point when you're just talking to your camera by yourself, trying to look super excited when there's no energy to go off of. So yeah, that's probably like if we had an S tier of all the interview types, which maybe we'll make for this episode, who knows? That would be the bottom. That's like the absolute bottom of the list for me.
Have you ever had a technical interview like that?
Yes, that was also when I was doing data internship interviewing, where the question that I have 60 seconds to respond to. So, like, the question flashes on the screen for like 30 seconds or something, and then you have a couple attempts to do a 60-second video response. And the question isn't just a behavioral, tell me about yourself, which we'll get into later. It's literally a question of like, what is the best technical project you've ever done and why? And I have
In
to
a
explain
minute.
that in a minute. Yeah.
All right.
They're really putting you through the ringer and seeing. I think it's also about weeding out, which is all the worst interview types, I think, are about like weeding out people that just aren't willing to go through that BS, frankly,
Mm.
to be honest. So like if you assume that 50% of people are just not willing to do it, now you have a lot less work on your plate.
You think of yeah, I mean it's like playing a game to not lose instead of playing the game to win, right? These
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
companies that do interviews like that, they play interview to knock out as many people as early as possible instead of
Hmm.
interview to find the right person. They interview to knock out as many people early as possible so that way they have less people to deal with later and they find what they might consider to be the most qualified person when in reality you just found the person that in that scenario that was willing to handle your BS and went through the ringer with you, which doesn't necessarily mean that was the person most qualified for the job.
That's a really good point, and I think companies definitely are losing out on that, especially with the like 10 stages of interviews that are normal now in tech. But actually, I think that you as the interviewer can play a smarter game of like, okay, what is the extra step that I'm willing to do that puts me above everybody else at my skill level?
Mm.
Excuse me. So it's doing the questionnaire, doing the monologue recorded interview, it's sending the follow-up email. And these are things that are like low lift, but if you play the game as, okay, how can I win against people at my same skill level? That's how you can kind of subvert the game a little bit.
It's like we know it's a game and we still have to play the game because if we don't play the game, there's 0% chance of us getting a job because, or with that, whatever that specific role that we're applying to, because someone else will play the game.
Exactly.
So if
And
we
it's exactly what
don't,
you said. It's you're not playing to win, you're playing to not lose.
and the company's playing to not lose.
And the company, yeah,
The company's playing to spend the least amount of time possible reviewing resumes and reviewing candidates and interviewing candidates because you put a lot of time into that. They're thinking from a financial element of okay, how little time can we invest into this process and give us the best return, which is why we have these monologue type interviews, right? So those are I get frustrated with the way interviews are conducted.
totally. I think that if we all think that if we ran the world, we'd do it a certain way, but I'm sure there are a bunch of constraints going into this. And speaking of those like financial constraints, Sam, do you think that certain kinds of interviews should actually get compensation and pay for the interviewer going through that round? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. There are certain types of projects that I've been asked to do before, take home projects where the interviewer says don't spend more than 4 hours on this, but then they give you 3 days to turn it in, right? Well, obviously, I'm going to spend a lot more than 4 hours on it in the 3 days that you've now given me to do this because I want the best work to come. And this was like before ChatGPT. It's like I want like the best work to come forward, right? And in those, it's like, well, I think there probably should be some element of compensation to that because this person put a lot of time into whatever you're asking them to do. I think if you really want a take home project, right? I'd rather live code, but if you want a take home project, it needs to I need to give you the material at 3 p.m. and then by 5 p.m. you need to have emailed it back. Like I'm only
Totally.
giving you the 2 hour window. I'm making you respect your own time, and that's kind of the biggest thing. I make you respect your own time as the interviewer because I know if I give you 3 days but tell you not to spend more than 4 hours, you're going to spend a lot more than 4 hours, and that's not what I want.
Yeah, we have to be realistic about people's expectations and like how careful you're being with your first impressions at a company. You have to know that as the interviewer. And it's so great that there are people like you on that side of the table thinking that way instead of just being like, oh, how long can we get them to do free work? Like you're actually doing this the right way and thinking about it the right way. I think it's, yeah, go ahead.
A lot of companies will give these interviews to people just to see what other ideas these people come up with, right? And then the company will say, "Hey, thanks, we're going in a different direction." And it's like, "Well, I just like gave you, right, my if you were a company, you would call that intellectual property, right, or whatever, IP, right? But as an individual, I can't claim anything to that. I just gave you whatever work I did over the last couple of days."
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're creating a situation where the company gains something no matter what, and the worker stands to lose a lot with low odds that they'll get anything out of it. And
I spent like eight
that's the
hours
real
working,
disparity.
and I got
Exactly.
nothing out of it.
Yeah. The power imbalance of like, I'm definitely winning and you're probably losing.
And I didn't even get like a future referral out of I get zero, like there's nothing, no benefit in it for me, unless maybe during those 8 hours of work, maybe I learned something, maybe
Hmm.
like with the technical skills that I'm working on or the project that I'm working on. Sure, maybe I learned something, but it's all you can't pay me in. I can't pay my rent with learning, right? That's not.
Yeah, you just go to your landlord and be like, but I learned this new Python package. And they'll be like, what are you talking about? I think it's also kind of funny that there's such a low threshold for what companies owe interviewees, I guess we could call them, where you don't even get feedback. You can spend 10 hours on a project, you don't even get like 2 words about it.
My I know people close to me that are right now in life getting rejected from places like coffee shops and not even getting feedback on why they got rejected from the coffee shop. And like corporate scenarios, people getting rejected. And I'm friends with recruiters too, and I talk to recruiters about this, and they're told not to give feedback because they could get sued, right?
Exactly.
Anything they say could eventually get used against the company in some way if the person's able to take those words and make it look like some sort of discrimination case, right? I mean, it's ridiculous how I guess one, how paranoid companies are, but also two, how much people just are looking to take advantage of other people, whether it's an interviewee who's trying to sue a company just for some feedback that they got that they misconstrued, or a company thinking that every candidate's going to go sue them if they mess up a word here or there in the feedback or they don't get the right word. So then just no one gets feedback. And so how does that help?
Totally. Yeah, it's just dehumanizing and lacking humanity, honestly. And that's the sad part. And I think sometimes even just getting the rejection that people are so familiar with getting, even that feels like a win because people are expecting to be ghosted at this point. People are
Right.
happy when they get an email at
Yeah.
all.
Even just like, hey, thanks for coming in, thanks for taking the time.
Hmm.
After conferring with the team, and then at that point you have to like obviously the recruiter or whoever has to be very careful with their words. But even if you just say after conferring with the team, we're looking to go in a different direction. I mean, it's such a stupid line that means nothing. But even that's better than getting ghosted, right?
Totally, totally. And it's human and it's respectful and it's saying like, hey, you're a person and I respect you,
And even
which we could use more of.
companies also have internal candidates that they're already pushing into that role, and that's another thing. They have internal candidates pushing into the role, so they open it up. They have to do a certain amount of interviews for it to be legal, right? And then they ghost you because they push the internal candidate into the role, and then that's it. I've had it happen to me. I ended up not taking those jobs because I would go somewhere else. But working, for example, as a contractor,
Hmm.
and the company would need 4 to 5 months to open up the role, and then they would push me into that role. That was the idea initially, at least. But they had to post it online, so the job was online for like a week, right, on the website, and I'm sure a lot of people probably applied to it. They maybe even interviewed some people. I didn't really ask, and then I rejected the job anyway. But so I know this is a thing that happens a lot, where you're just trying to like check the boxes for not getting sued,
Right.
and then just push an internal candidate into a different role.
Wow. It could happen to you, folks. Anyone who's listening, it could happen to you. Yeah, that's kind of wild. I have never actually met someone who that happened to, so I didn't know that that was your situation. But yeah, we see a lot of fake application openings for a lot of different reasons. And I think companies, they talk a lot about like AI applicants. But again, there's the power balance where like, okay, that could be, an hour of more work on the recruiter side. Whereas people applying to fake jobs or people applying to job listings where there's no intention of them being able to even go forward, that's such a power imbalance where you're losing so much more than the company is even losing.
We've gotten down a really sad dark hole, so I'll
Yeah,
try to pull us out. We'll
totally.
change
You know
directions a
who
little.
who can pull yourself, who can pull you out of a hole when you're interviewing is your mentor.
So we'll sidebar the interview. Well, it's not sidebarring the interview conversation necessarily. It's an extension of the interview conversation, which is like leveraging your network and leveraging people you trust to help you grow, so that way you're better prepared for the interviews. But there's a lot of caveats with this too. So what is a mentor?
What is a mentor? A mentor is ideally somebody who's like 1 to 3 steps ahead of you in terms of your journey and where you want to be, who knows how to give you good advice and understands the places where you're not as strong, how to optimize your strengths and help your weaknesses, and basically just guide you to the place where they are. And that's why I mentioned someone who is like 1 to 3 steps ahead of you in your career journey or your just general life journey. Because if you talk to somebody who's like 20 years ahead of you, they're not even playing the same game. They're not even worried about the same things. And it's hard for you to even relate to them in a certain sense. So that's why you want to find someone who's maybe like a couple of years older than you, a couple levels ahead of you in the place that you want to be, where they still remember what it's like to be you.
You say 2 steps ahead.
Yeah, I said 1 to 3 because I hear 2 steps ahead all the time. And I think it's like, my idea is like, it doesn't have to be exactly 2 steps ahead, but sure, roughly 2 steps ahead.
Shout out to our friend Naman with his podcast.
Yes, the Ready, Set, Do podcast, which is all about learning from certified non-experts who are 2 steps ahead of like a beginner or someone just starting out. It's a really cool podcast. Go check it out if you're interested, and we are on there too, so you'll see familiar faces.
Kind of along the same idea, right? It's like find people who aren't experts to help you learn a little bit more about it, but people who know some things about it. I really like that. I really like that definition of a mentor and what a mentor is and what a mentor does, and how a mentor can help you. But a mentor, it's serious too, right? I mean, we're asking for, like, if I'm going to ask someone to be a mentor to me, then I'm going to ask someone for, maybe 2-3 hours a month of their time to just kind of help me be on the right track, help me
Hmm.
make sure, and that's like live usually, right? Whether it's in person or over a video call, help me make sure I'm on the right track for whatever my goals are. What does that mean? As an individual, I have to have my goals clear. I have to know what it is that I'm reaching for. I have to be reaching for something in a place of growth and in a place of kind of being uncomfortable right now because I'm trying to grow to somewhere that I'm not currently comfortable being in.
Hmm.
And I have to be serious about it, right? I have to invest the time and I have to invest the energy to do the learning, whatever it is. So on my end as a mentee, right, I need to be someone that takes that ask very seriously, and not just try to be like a leech or a parasite onto this person that I'm asking to be a mentor.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's actually the biggest thing about mentorship is how you view it and how you handle it, because the biggest thing is accountability. And at a very an emotional and vulnerable level, it's a little bit of like, I want to make them proud, you know? I want them to be able to say like, yeah, I'm mentoring that person and they're doing great and they're killing it and like I'm so proud of them. And there's a little bit of validation in there, which I think is a really good motivator for people. And also just knowing like, oh, I'm calling my mentor in a week. I got to have this done. I got to be able to say I invested in this skill like they said I should. And that accountability is huge.
So should I look for a mentor when I'm starting to think about interviewing for a new role, or like what's the right time to look for a mentor?
You should look for a mentor 5 minutes before your interview at Facebook. Totally. No. And that's obviously wrong. That's obviously satire because you want to network and build relationships and build up a brand before you actually need it. This is the secret to a lot of things in your career because you're not going to get close with somebody in 5 minutes. You're not going to like glean insights from somebody in 5 minutes. You need to be building up those relationships and maintaining them when you don't need something. Because just like you don't want a friend who wants to borrow money one time and then dip, you don't want, or a mentor doesn't want someone who just shows up when they need something and doesn't want to like be in a kind of mutual relationship.
I think we have our sound bites for today. What you just said, you struck the chord right. Is that we need to be looking for a mentor when we need it the least, and I think that puts us in a position of, hey, can you be my mentor? I have these goals, right? I have these things I have in mind, but I don't need to achieve them tomorrow or even next month, right? These are kind of like long-ish term goals, right? Those okay be 20 years, right? Because we're talking about 1 to 3 steps ahead, but at the same time, we're looking for 1 to 3 to 5, maybe 5 year goals that we're trying to find a mentor for who can kind of help us be on the right track to achieve those things. Would you say that's close to on the right track?
Yeah, and I think it could be interesting to talk about how we met our mentors, just like as a brief detour, because I haven't done the traditional like search for a mentor and reach out to a bunch of people and find somebody. Maybe you've done something like that. But I really view Nick Singh, the author of Ace the Data Science Interview, founder of datalemur.com, I really view him as my long-term mentor. And the reason that we met was because I was a student reaching out to him about doing a talk at my university, like at my data science club that I led. And I think it's really powerful to meet someone in this mutual context where you're not begging for something. You're in a situation where you're offering each other something, and then you build a genuine relationship of like, oh, I think you're interesting. I think you're nice to talk to. I think we can learn a lot from each other or help each other with stuff. And now you have a very organic mentor relationship. Just the same way you don't go up to someone and be like, hey, will you be my friend? You meet people and you build relationships with them.
You did it a lot better than I did.
Mm.
I kind of like, so I did Zach's boot camp, Zach Wilson's boot camp, and as part of the boot camp, if you like finish, this was maybe like 2 years ago now, no, a year and a half ago.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, coming up on 2 years. And if you finished it and did it all the way through and did some other things, right, he would hook you up with someone in his network was essentially the deal, right? And I got hooked up with this guy named Lenny. And Lenny and I actually still talk. We're part of the same Discord channel, actually Joe Ray's Discord channel. And Lenny's pretty active in the Discord channel, and I talk to Lenny now and again. But we had probably 10 meetings. So mine looked a lot different than yours, right? Where we had 10 meetings just after I finished, or somewhere in there, after I finished Zach's boot camp, and he really helped me understand a lot of things around. Okay, I like data engineering. I actually didn't. So this was again very recently that this even happened. Before it was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. But I think Lenny really did help me see how valuable like a formal mentor is, and someone that can invest time into you and someone that can kind of guide you who's in that right spot. I gained a lot from that. And then as of now, right, I kind of I don't have one at the moment, but I still talk to Lenny, so I think Lenny would be the closest thing to one that I have. But now that I see, okay, right now I think why I don't have one formally is because I don't know where I want to go. I'm sitting on a lot of different options, and so I'm
Yeah.
not going to ask someone to guide me when I don't even know what it is that I want to be guided on. I pick up 4 books at a time, right? And it takes me 6 months to work through the 4 books because I'm trying to work through each of the 4 books. So it's like, okay, what do I want to do? And so right now that's okay. Like for the next couple months, that's okay. It's just the spot that I'm in. And then once I identified that path that I want to, okay, this is where I want to go. This is where I want
Hmm.
to be. Then maybe look for someone, right? But it's kind of that point of don't waste people's time.
Yeah, I really like the way you're approaching that of respecting other people's time and also respecting your own self-determination over your life, honestly, because it's kind of like a therapist, right? Where it's not your mentor's job to make decisions for you. That's not their job. And they physically can't do it. Like they can make a decision for themselves, and they can make a decision for you, but then it's not your life anymore. So you need to come to somebody with a plan and say, hey, you have the knowledge, you have the career experience. What's the best way for me to go forward with this plan in like 3 months or whatever the runway is? So I really like that approach and just acknowledging that like it's not someone there to guide your life. It's someone there to guide you toward the goals once you've kind of charted the next course for your life.
I think we did a good job.
Yeah.